Welcome to reading number 4 of The Hobbit, written by J.R.R. Tolkien. Here's a quick recap of what we've learned so far. Bilbo Baggins had unplanned visitors come to his home, including many dwarves and Gandalf the Great Wizard. They ate, drank, sang songs, and told some strange tales. Songs and tales of faraway mountains, secret doors, and dangerous dragons. Bilbo found himself excited about joining this adventure, but he wasn't sure why he was going, and he asked Thorin the mighty dwarf to tell him more about the quest. Bilbo also wondered if he would ever return from it. Now, Kathy Hughes from our Mount Kisco Youth Connection program reading number 4 of The Hobbit.
"Oh, very well," said Thorin. "Long ago in my grandfather Thror's time, our family was driven out of the far north, and came back with all their wealth and their tools to this mountain on the map. It had been discovered by my far ancestor Thrain the Old, but now they mined and they tunneled, and they made huger halls and greater workshops. And in addition, I believe they found a good deal of gold, and a great many jewels too. Anyway, they grew immensely rich and famous, and my grandfather was king under the mountain again, and treated with great reverence by the mortal men who lived to the south, and were gradually spreading up the running river as far as the valley overshadowed by the mountain. They built the merry town of Dale there in those days. Kings used to send for our smiths, and reward even the least skillful most richly. Fathers would beg us to take their sons as apprentices, and pay us handsomely, especially in food supplies, which we never bothered to grow or find for ourselves. Altogether, those were good days for us, and the poorest of us had money to spend and to lend, and leisure to make beautiful things just for the fun of it, not to speak of the most marvelous and magical toys, the like of which is not to be found in the world nowadays. So my grandfather's halls became full of armor and jewels and carvings and cups, and the toy market of Dale was the wonder of the north. Undoubtedly, that was what brought the dragon. Dragons steal gold and jewels, you know, from men and elves and dwarves, wherever they can find them. And they guard their plunder as long as they live, which is practically forever unless they are killed. Indeed, they hardly know a good bit of work from a bad, though they usually have a good notion of the current market value, and they can't make a thing for themselves, not even mend a little loose scale of their armor. There were lots of dragons in the north in those days, and gold was probably getting scarce up there, with the dwarves flying south or getting killed, and all the general waste and destruction that dragons make going from bad to worse. There was a most specially greedy, strong and wicked worm called Smog. One day he flew up into the air and came south. The first we heard of it was a noise like a hurricane coming from the north, and the pine trees on the mountain creaking and cracking in the wind. Some of the dwarves who happened to be outside, I was one luckily, a fine adventurous lad in those days, always wandering about, and it saved my life that day. From a good way off we saw the dragon settle on our mountain in a spout of flame. Then he came down the slopes, and when he reached the woods they all went up in fire. By that time all the bells were ringing in Dale, and the warriors were arming. The dwarves rushed out of their great gate, but there was the dragon waiting for them. None escaped that way. The river rushed up in stream, and a fog fell on Dale. And in the fog the dragon came on them and destroyed most of the warriors. The usual unhappy story. It was only too common in those days. Then he went back and crept in through the front gate, and routed out all the halls and lanes and tunnels, alleys, cellars, mansions, and passages. After that there were no dwarfs left alive inside, and he took all their wealth for himself. Probably, for that is the dragon's way, he has piled it all up in a great heap far inside, and sleeps on it for a bed. Later he used to crawl out of the great gate, and come by night to Dale, and carry away people, especially maidens, to eat, until Dale was ruined, and all the people dead or gone. What goes on there now I don't know for certain, but I don't suppose anyone lives nearer to the mountain than the far edge of the long lake nowadays. The few of us that were well outside sat and wept in hiding, and cursed Smog, and there we were unexpectedly joined by my father and my grandfather, with singed beards. They looked very grim, but they said very little. When I asked how they got away, they told me to hold my tongue, and said that one day, in the proper time, I should know. After that we went away, and we have had to earn our livings as best we could, up and down the lands, often enough sinking as low as blacksmith work or even coal mining. But we have never forgotten our stolen treasure, and even now, when I will allow, we have a good bit laid by and are not so badly off. Here Thorin stroked the gold chain round his neck. We still mean to get it back, and to bring our curses home to Smog if we can. I have often wondered about my father's and my grandfather's escape. I see now that they must have had a private side door, which only they knew about. But apparently they made a map, and I should like to know how Gandalf got hold of it, and why it did not come down to me, the rightful heir. I didn't get a hold of it. I was given it, said the wizard. Your grandfather Thror was killed, you remember, in the mines of Moria by Azog the goblin. Curse his name, yes, said Thorin. And Thrain, your father, went away on the 21st of April, 100 years ago last Thursday, and has never been seen by you since. True, true, said Thorin. Well, your father gave me this to give to you, and if I have chosen my own time and way for handing it over, you can hardly blame me, considering the trouble I had to find you. Your father could not remember his own name when he gave me the paper, and he never told me yours. So on the whole, I think I ought to be praised and thanked. Here it is, said he, handing the map to Thorin. I don't understand, said Thorin, and Bilbo felt he would have liked to say the same. The explanation did not seem to explain. Your grandfather, said the wizard slowly and grimly, gave the map to his son for safety before he went to the mines of Moria. Your father went away to try his luck with the map after your grandfather was killed, and lots of adventures of a most unpleasant sort he had, but he never got near the mountain. How he got there I don't know, but I found him a prisoner in the dungeons of the necromancer. Whatever were you doing there? Asked Thorin with a shudder, and all the dwarfs shivered. Never you mind. I was finding things out, as usual, and a nasty, dangerous business it was. Even I, Gandalf, only just escaped. I tried to save your father, but it was too late. He was witless and wandering, and had forgotten almost everything except the map and the key. We have long ago paid the goblins of Moria, said Thorin. We must give a thought to the necromancer. Don't be absurd. He is an enemy far beyond the powers of all the dwarves put together. If they could all be collected again from the four corners of the world, the one thing your father wished was for his son to read the map and use the key. The dragon and the mountain are more than big enough task for you. Hear, hear, said Bilbo, and accidentally said it out loud. Hear what? They all said, turning suddenly towards him, and he was so flustered that he answered, Hear what I have got to say. What's that? They asked. Well, I should say that you ought to go east and have a look around. After all, there is the side door, and dragons must sleep sometimes, I suppose. If you sit on the doorstep long enough, I dare say you will think of something. And, well, don't you know, I think we have talked long enough for one night, if you see what I mean. What about bed, and an early start, and all that? I will give you a good breakfast before you go. Before we go, I suppose you mean, said Thorin. Aren't you the burglar? And isn't sitting on the doorstep your job? Not to speak of getting inside the door. But I agree about bed and breakfast. I like 6 eggs with my ham when starting on a journey, fried, not poached, and mind you, don't break 'em. After all the others had ordered their breakfasts, without so much as a please, which annoyed Bilbo very much, they all got up. The Hobbit had to find room for them all, and filled all his spare rooms. and made beds on chairs and sofas. Before he got them all stowed and went to his own little bed, very tired and not altogether happy. One thing he did make his mind up about was not to bother to get up very early and cook everybody else's wretched breakfast. The tookishness was wearing off, and he was not now quite so sure that he was going on any journey in the morning. As he lay in bed, he could hear Thorin still humming to himself in the best bedroom next to him. Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away our break of day to find our long forgotten gold. Bilbo went to sleep with that in his ears, and it gave him very uncomfortable dreams. It was long after the break of day when he woke up.